While Iceland is a popular destination that many people rave about, especially when it comes to the nature, history, culture, language being fascinating, there are some things that people don't like who visit, and here are 5 that I'm gonna share in this video. Of course, this is not about bashing Iceland. It's just helping people to understand that there's pros and cons to every experience. You might not find that you dislike any of these things. I'd be surprised if there's not at least one that would be not your favorite, but that's okay. It's good to kind of know them beforehand if you've never visited before, or if you're coming back to keep them in mind so that you can manage your expectations. The first one is so fascinating because unless you've read up about it, you would not expect this at all. And that is the water, the hot water in particular, can smell like sulfur or rotten eggs. And in the Reykjavik area, you will more than likely experience this quite a bit. Strong smell when you turn on the hot water, which can get very hot quickly. So FYI, be careful when you turn on the hot water. It can get scalding hot. But that sulfur smell is because as they're pumping out hot water from these geothermal sources, they're sometimes getting them from low temperature areas. And so they're pumping in a little bit of hydrogen sulfide, which is a chemical, in order to help protect against erosion in the pipes that this water is running through to get to people's homes. And so when you turn on the hot water in the shower or maybe in the kitchen, you might smell that rotten egg smell. Not nice. Something that can definitely be a turnoff. And of course, I can understand people's concerns about thinking that you're gonna smell like it. You will not. It does evaporate off of you. And drinking that water is not pleasant because of the smell. However, it's not going to harm you. The thing is, the drinking water that you should, and I encourage you to drink, is the cold tap water, because these are coming from different sources. And the cold tap water is delicious, does not have that smell. And you can easily just run the cold water if there had been hot water running previously, or just to make sure for a few seconds. And you can test the water just to make sure it's cold before you drink it, and you're fine, no problems. Iceland has some of the best water in the world, but the hot water can smell a little bit like rotten eggs. Number 2 is Iceland is expensive. I hear this a lot, and that is true. There are a lot of things in the country that are expensive. There are reasons why there are a lot of things in the country that are expensive. One of them being that we import a lot of items. We import the majority of the stuff that we consume. Of course, when it comes to cars, all of these things that are everyday items that can't particularly be made in the country are imported. There's also a higher minimum in terms of how much people are paid. So when you go to restaurants or any type of place that provides customer service, they're also paying higher for those salaries in order to meet a livable wage for those individuals. So all of this gets piled on top when it comes to pricing. And also in general, like other countries, we have things like inflation. And so that comes together into numbers that can often be shocking to some individuals if you are not prepared for knowing that Iceland can be expensive. And there are ways for sure to be able to save a buck here or there, but it's also good to just understand how much things cost in Iceland so that you're not shocked by the prices or what to expect in terms of how much you can spend for particular activities. There are also free things to do in Reykjavik and other places in the country. I'll have a video about that. But before I go into the third thing that people don't like about Iceland, I have a special announcement. So as many of you know, I've been living and working in Iceland since 2016. I've been traveling around and sharing content about Iceland, its history, culture, nature, language, travel, all of that since 2018 on the podcast here and many other places. And for the last year, I have been compiling this information, stuff you've seen, of course, here on YouTube, but so much more that I have not touched on, into a digital video guide called The Savvy Traveler's Guide to Iceland. And I am launching that next month in February. However, I do have an early bird offer that I am making available to my subscribers in order to get a deeply discounted price for that guide, before it is launched, and I have details about it in the link below. But if you decide to get this early bird offer, you'll get instant access to my trip planning cheat sheet for Iceland, which is super helpful for kickstarting you off with planning your trip to Iceland. You'll be entered to win a 1-hour trip planning consultation call with me. I've done hundreds of these consultation calls helping people to plan their trips to Iceland over the years, and I really love doing them. So I know this would be really helpful for you if you end up winning it. You'll get 20% off my Iceland map. This early bird offer is only available until January 19th. After that, it expires, and people who want to get on a wait list for when it launches can pay full price when it comes out in February. But the early bird offer people will immediately get access to it in February. I'll have an email that's sent to you. If you want to grab this offer, which gives you lifetime access, by the way, definitely check out the link below and learn about why this guide is going to be a fantastic resource for you planning a trip to Iceland. Third thing that people do not like, many visitors don't like about Iceland, is the unpredictable weather. And I understand. You have a limited amount of time, you're in the country, you're doing your best to see things, maybe there's a storm warning, a wind warning. I always say to people that we do not have any land animals that are predators, but the nature is the predator, because these storms are no joke. They can rip doors off of cars, blow people off the roads. And this is not to scare people. It's more so just to inform you that absolutely necessary for you to be cautious and to heed any warnings, to look at the weather before you leave. And I get the fact that people who are visiting only have a limited amount of time, and so it can be frustrating or hard when I say to stay flexible with your planning, because if there is a storm and they're telling people to stay off the roads, you have to do that. You have to pay attention to it, because it can become dangerous quickly. For some people, that's all part of the adventure and they embrace it. Not everybody's the same, let's be honest. Also, the weather in general is cooler than what people expect, especially in the summertime. In the wintertime, people are okay with the fact that if it gets cold, even though Iceland does not get as cold as many other places. Like, I've had people who are even here on YouTube that live in Minnesota and who laugh at the fact that I said negative 10 degrees Celsius as a low, because to them, that's not that cold. So it just makes me laugh that in general, though, we're not getting crazy low temperatures. But in summertime, we're also not getting super high temperatures. Getting 60 degrees Fahrenheit as a high in the summertime, so 20 degrees Celsius or even around that, is amazing. In Iceland, that's a heat wave. People are walking around like it's Venice Beach, okay? So it is legitimately a different idea of summer here, and it's good to keep that in mind. You will have to wear layers regardless of the time of the year, and that's necessary for you to be able to put on or take off depending how the weather changes. When you visit Iceland, especially if you get a guide, you'll have heard the joke that if you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes, because it changes that often. And even when there's a weather forecast, maybe that's right, maybe not, but that's just how we deal with it. I personally have embraced it, but like I mentioned, not everybody's a fan. Next up is that it's been getting around over the years. I've seen in some articles that Iceland is overcrowded. And while I think that people are on to understanding that more people are coming to Iceland, the only thing I want to add to that is it's certain areas in which there are a lot of people that go to, because there's not enough spreading of people around Iceland in terms of those that visit, you end up having areas that can get crowded. Does that mean that all of the country is overcrowded? No, it is not like that. And I hope it doesn't ever become like that. Who knows what will go on in the future, but places like the Highlands, the West Fjords, parts of the East Fjords, parts of the North, you could definitely go, and these are even some parts of the South, but I'm not gonna say, because you'll find out if you join the Savvy Traveler's Guide to Iceland. Okay, I've got my hidden gems, but there's parts everywhere in which you can end up where there are not a lot of people, and it's incredible to be able to go and enjoy these places. But I know that social media, YouTube, all of these outlets often talk about popular places, and those can get crowded. So of course, with those who've been to Iceland way before there was a decent amount of tourism, they're aware that there's a lot more people packed into areas. But like I mentioned, there are ways around that. And the perception is mostly based off of going and traveling around the South Coast or the Golden Circle, Blue Lagoon, areas like that. But like I said, that is not everywhere, so keep that in mind because there are so many gorgeous places around Iceland. So don't be discouraged, even if you hear that it's overcrowded, but I can understand why people don't like that. The last on my list has to do with customer service. This is also fascinating because it can be hit or miss depending on where you go. The tourism industry in Iceland has evolved a lot. It has needed to in order to keep up with having tourists from places, especially from the United States, where greeting people as soon as they come in or being really friendly and those aspects of customer service or just following up with individuals is a necessary part of being competitive in this space. And every company can vary in terms of how they train their staff. And I know that personally I've been into places and have seen other people who live here who have gone to shops or whatever else, and it just seems like the person's not even paying attention to you, right? It's just like when you want something, you go and you let them know. Does that happen everywhere? No. Can it happen? Yeah. And does it happen maybe like downtown Reykjavik? Probably not as much now because that is a place where there's a lot more tourism. And so being able to adapt to the customer service requirements or expectations of the people that are visiting is something that has been necessary. However, I have heard some people talk about how the customer service has been a little bit strange to them. And sometimes they're wondering like, these people just not want to serve me or things of that nature. So I just want to put that out there, like in the event that you don't have the best customer service experience, that this could be the reason. I can't speak for everybody. Some people are rude. There are rude people in every place, every country. It's not meant to be, representative of every Icelander or every part of the country or anything like that. However, there are some fascinating changes happening in the customer service industry in Iceland. And I find it interesting to see how that continues to evolve. And granted, not all of the travelers come here and talk about these things because many of them, like you, are watching this channel and so you're aware. But I would like to know if you've never been to Iceland, do any of these things shock you? If you have been to Iceland, do you resonate with any of these or something else that you didn't particularly like? That's really fascinating to know. Just to get more feedback from people about how they're feeling. If you want to have a fantastic resource for planning a trip to Iceland, make sure you grab that early bird offer for the Savvy Traveler's Guide to Iceland. As always, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one.